Blood trickles down a man's face as he leans over the steering wheel of a hijacked car as the rain pounds against the windscreen. The last final moments of Glenn Clark, the Kinahan cartel's worst hitman, has just killed his final victim, himself. This is not another gangland murder. It's the culmination of a bloody trail through Ireland and Spain, and where 3 innocent men lost their lives simply because a sloppy killer could not identify his victims correctly. Glenn Clark's life started in the crime-filled streets of Dublin in early 2010. The 26-year-old was drawn into the infamous Kinahan cartel at a critical juncture. The war between the Kinahans and their arch-rivals, the Hutch gang, was about to become Ireland's deadliest gang war. Christy Kinahan and his sons, Daniel and Christopher Jr., were building their criminal empire, bringing on board people prepared to kill if needed. They saw Glenn Clark as a capable shooter, but did not see a serious problem that would turn against them. Clark's deadly career started on August 24, 2013, in the West Dublin suburb of Clondalkin. The warm summer night was shattered by the noise of gunfire as 21-year-old Dean Johnson walked along Harelawn Green. Dean Johnson fell to the ground, a fatal shot, but he was not the target. Clark had been sent to murder gangland figure James Nellie Walsh. Instead, he murdered a harmless young man with no criminal involvement at all. This huge mistake should have been a warning to his employers, but the Kinahan cartel kept him on their payroll, and more innocent victims suffered. Clark was questioned by the police regarding Johnson's murder, but they lacked sufficient evidence, and they were compelled to release him. The investigation was ongoing, but Clark was free to continue killing. The war between Dublin crime groups intensified in September 2015 when Gary Hutch, a nephew of Jerry the Monk Hutch, was assassinated in Spain. The assassination led to a massive war between Hutch and Kinahan gangs, and both dispatched hitmen all over Dublin for retaliation. The Kinahan cartel, attempting to assassinate Hutch members, involved Glenn Clark once more. Sheriff Street, North Inner City Dublin, was crowded at midday on the 14th of April, 2016. Martin O'Rourke, a 24-year-old father of 3, with the 4th on the way, strolled along the streets unaware that he was to be the next victim of Clark's fatal error. Clark had been instructed to murder a top Hutch associate, but once again shot the wrong person. Gunfire rang out on the crowded street as Clark discharged his weapon without taking a moment to see who was in his path. After the commotion had ceased, O'Rourke lay dying on the ground. This time, Clark made a serious mistake that would seal his fate. He dropped the murder weapon near the scene of the crime, and when the police picked it up, they found clear evidence: Clark's DNA on the trigger. This connection would later enable authorities to formally convict him as the killer of O'Rourke. The violence continued into summer, but it extended to other locations, demonstrating the extent to which Ireland's gang feud had spread. In August 2016, Trevor O'Neill, a Dublin City Council employee, was enjoying a family holiday with his girlfriend Suzanne and their 3 young children in the sunspot location of Costa de la Calma in Mallorca. By the cruel hand of fate, Jonathan Hutch, another nephew of Jerry the Monk Hutch and a Kinahan cartel target, was also holidaying at the same holiday apartment complex. The 2 men had briefly met, exchanging a general chat like other holidaymakers. Clark came to Mallorca one day earlier to meet Jonathan Hutch and was instructed to kill him. While O'Neill strolled with his family, Clark approached from the rear and mistakenly believed the target was Jonathan Hutch. In a spontaneous moment, he shot O'Neill in the back and then fled. Glenn Clark had murdered an innocent man for the 3rd time, while his actual target escaped unharmed. A family was destroyed for the 3rd time due to his unfortunate blunders. Spanish authorities soon found Clark was their prime suspect. They found that he arrived in Mallorca just before the murder and departed immediately after. the Spanish police collaborated with Ireland's Garda Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau to construct a case against the reckless Hitman, now a thorn in the side of his employers. Even as the police closed in, Clark was also suspected of another high-profile murder. Noel Duggan, a 55-year-old close associate of Jerry Hutch, was shot dead in his car outside his home in the Old Mill Estate in Ratoath, County Meath, on March 23, 2016. Witnesses said they saw a single gunman dressed in dark clothes making a quick getaway and getting into a dark BMW. The getaway vehicle was subsequently found burning in a secluded side street nearby. Although Clark's role in this murder was never clearly established, the police were actively investigating his potential involvement when he died. If he were guilty, the Duggan murder would be the sole instance where Clark hit his target. The final chapter in Glenn Clark's life of violence began on the 1st of December 2016. He departed his Cabra home at the precise moment at 6:47 p.m. At 8:15 p.m., people saw the car parked with the engine idling in the Riverdale complex in Leixlip, County Kildare. Inside the car, Clark had changed into a white suit and gloves, the typical attire of a hitman preparing for business. But something catastrophically went wrong. As he inspected his gun, perhaps looking down the weapon's muzzle, a shot was discharged. The bullet struck him in the right eye, causing enormous brain damage that would prove fatal. In a final irony, the worst hitman in Ireland had accidentally shot himself. The vehicle remained parked in the suburban area for hours, the engine idling, the driver severely hurt but alive. It wasn't until 1:30 a.m. on December 2nd that passers-by even noticed anything amiss. They discovered Clark leaning over the steering wheel, struggling to breathe, a scarf or snood pulled over his nose to conceal his identity. Emergency responders hurried him to Connolly Hospital in Blanchardstown, but the wounds were too severe. At 3:42 p.m. on December 2nd, 2016, Glenn Clark was pronounced dead. The investigation into Clark's death showed just how inexperienced he was. In the car, police found a handgun, the suspected murder weapon, in the footwell at the rear of the driver's seat. Clark's DNA was on the trigger, as it was on the gun that murdered Martin O'Rourke. A burner mobile phone was found in the driver's footwell, most likely used to speak to his criminal colleagues. Even in a thorough search that Detective Superintendent Frank Kinahan later testified to ripping every seat, panel, and mat apart, the bullet used to murder Clark was never found. Kinahan thought it was perhaps taken away in the man's clothes as he was taken into hospital. A medical examination discovered cocaine in Clark's system when he was killed, which could have contributed to his fatal error. The doctor, Myra Cullinane, ruled an open decision at the inquest, revealing that there was no definitive proof of suicide or accident. The family claimed that he did not kill himself, but the physical evidence, the gun with his DNA, the hitman's clothes, the stolen car with false plates, revealed a clear image of a man preparing to commit another murder when he accidentally killed himself. As the investigation into the death of Clark came to an end, the charges against him for his past murders also ceased. In June 2018, the Director of Public Prosecutions officially declared Clark to be Martin O'Rourke's killer based on the DNA on the weapon used to kill him. But the charges would not be filed because the killer was already dead. Meanwhile, the Spanish police completed their investigation of the murder of Trevor O'Neill, with the suspicion that Clark was the killer based on his behavior before and after the murder. But once again, charges could not be filed against a dead man. Clark's victims' families had to live with the tragedy of knowing who destroyed their lives, but never having seen him appear in a courtroom. How they chose to deal with this harsh reality revealed how people cope with loss and move on. For Trevor O'Neill's girlfriend, Suzanne Power, the lack of tangible evidence put her in an agonizing waiting game. 2 years on from the murder, she told the Irish Sun, I need someone to stand in front of me and tell me who killed Trevor. I may never be able to find out who fired the shot, and his murder is always in my head and on my mind day and night. The Kinahan Hutch gang war went on for many decades after Clark's death, ultimately taking 19 lives in total. But removing Glenn Clark from the hit team at the cartel's disposal may have ultimately saved innocent lives. His replacement assassins were certainly deadly, but they did not have his cooperative spirit for killing and disastrous ineptitude that made him so deadly to innocents. Glenn Clark's tale is a sad page in Ireland's crime book. 3 innocent men were killed, 3 families ruined, all because one man was unable to identify his victims and those who stood in his way. In the world of organized crime, there are several hitmen renowned for their skill and effectiveness. Clark is perhaps most famous for the opposite, perhaps most famous for a series of failures at the expense of lives. This was the story of Glenn Clark, the worst hitman in Ireland. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications for more criminal gang stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.